Imagine waking up one morning and deciding to claim a free block of land in the Australian outback. No mortgage, no auction, no bidding war, just yours. That's exactly what happened when one tiny Queensland town made the offer. And over 250 people came calling in under 2 weeks from all over the world. But almost none of them stayed. And once you hear what daily life actually looks like out there, you'll understand exactly why. And you'll have to decide for yourself if the trade-off is worth it. Made it this far? You've just outpaced almost everyone who clicked. Hit like. It tells the algorithm you want more real stories, less watered down fluff. Subscribe, because when the world starts feeling predictable, this channel won't. Now tell me, which one of these places gave you that something's not right feeling? I'll be in the comments, unless I end up on the next list. Number 8, Quilpie. So picture this, 800 people living in southwest Queensland put up what basically amounts to a free land, come live here sign. And within 2 weeks, 250 calls flood in from Sydney, from the US, from all over the world. That's not a housing program. That's a distress signal with good marketing. Quilpie started all of this. It went viral in 2021 when the New York Times picked it up. And suddenly, people scrolling through city apartments were daydreaming about red dirt and wide open skies. The offer was real. No auction, no bidding war, just a free residential block if you showed up and built something on it. Sounds like the easiest deal in real estate history, right? But what the headline skipped is that Quilpie isn't being generous. It's offering free land because people keep leaving and the town is slowly running out of neighbours. When the population shrinks, the school loses students, the pub loses customers, and the whole thing starts a slow slide toward just stopping. The free land isn't a gift. It's a calculated bet that a new family is worth more than an empty block. Think about what 800 people actually feels like day to day. That's smaller than most high schools. Your social circle is everyone, whether you click with them or not. And if you have a falling out with someone at the local shop, you're gonna see that exact person at the servo, at the footy, at the one pub in town every single week for as long as you both live there. Some people love that. A lot of people last about 3 months before it starts to feel less like community and more like a group chat. You can't leave. The land deals did happen. Quilpie handed over blocks to new families, and some of those families built homes and stayed, but 250 people called and 5 households moved in. Let that sink in. The gap between those two numbers is where the real story lives. And then there's the geography. Quilpie sits about 1,000 kilometers west of Brisbane, which is roughly a 12-hour drive. If something goes seriously wrong, medically, you're not hopping over to the nearest hospital. You're in a situation that gets dangerous fast, and distance stops being an abstract inconvenience and starts being a very concrete problem. The summers run at 40 degrees Celsius and above on a regular basis, the kind of heat that warps your windscreen, kills anything you try to grow, and makes you genuinely reconsider your entire personality. You're not going outside between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. You're just not. And yet, every single article about free land in Australia links back to Quilpie like it cracked the code. What it actually proved is that towns across Queensland's Channel Country watched what happened and immediately started running the same play. Number 7, Mutabura. 70 people, not 700, 70. That's the entire population of Mutabura, a tiny central Queensland town sitting in the Thompson River floodplain. And yes, it's running a land incentive program to pull in new residents. One sneeze at the wrong time and you've personally infected 5% of the town. The pitch sounds familiar by now. Land is cheap or free, the lifestyle is quiet, and the community needs you. What doesn't make it into any promotional material is what sharing a zip code with 70 people actually feels like when you're living it every single day. Not visiting, not passing through, actually living there. At 70 residents, Mutabura can't support most of the things you currently take for granted. No supermarket, no GP on site. The school runs on numbers so thin that one family packing up and leaving can genuinely reshape the entire classroom dynamic overnight. And when the Thompson River floods, which it does regularly and without much apology, the roads go under and the town becomes a literal island. Not metaphorically, physically cut off. So, if you're the kind of person who needs to be somewhere by Tuesday, Mutabora will absolutely break you. Now, the Freeland pitch does get one thing right. The land around Mutabora is genuinely productive cattle country, and the region supports broadacre grazing in a real way. If you're arriving with agricultural skills, or at least a concrete plan to work in that sector, there's actual economic logic to planting yourself here. But agricultural work is seasonal, peaking in late summer and dropping off sharply in late winter. So even that income stream isn't a steady tap you can just turn on. Most people responding to Freeland offers aren't experienced graziers though. They're city people who are completely done with rent prices and just want out. And Mutabora doesn't need someone hunting an exit. It needs someone who shows up to build something, because the difference between those two types of people becomes obvious within about 6 weeks. The community is tight in the way that only 70 people can be tight. Everyone knows your car, your dog's name, what time you left the house this morning, and probably what you argued about last Tuesday. Some people genuinely find that comforting. A lot of people find it suffocating, and they find that out about themselves faster than they expected. And unless you're farming, running your own business, or working remotely, the job market in a town of 70 isn't really a market at all. It's a very short list, and most of the spots on it are already taken by people who've been there for decades. Mutabora's offer is real. The lifestyle it delivers is exactly what it advertises. 40-degree summers, flood risk, zero anonymity, and a Saturday night social scene that depends entirely on who walked into the pub. Number 6, Augathella. Augathella has 300 people, sits about 700 kilometers west of Brisbane, and gets rainfall so unpredictable that local farmers basically treat every single year like a roll of the dice. So when the Maranoa Region Council starts talking about Freeland and new families, the climate isn't a footnote, it's the whole conversation. On paper, Augathella actually isn't a bad deal compared to what we've already covered. There's a pub, a school, a servo, a small medical service, and enough community activity to fill your week if footy season, and knowing your neighbours counts as a social life for you. The land is cheap, the people are real, and the offer isn't a scam. You're not ready for the part where the weather just casually dismantles your entire plan though. Australian Bureau of Agricultural and Resource Economics data on broadacre farming is pretty blunt about what long-term climate shifts have done to farm profitability in drought-prone regions. Average returns have dropped over recent decades in areas where rainfall reliability has gone sideways, and Augathella sits right in that zone. You're not just buying into a community when you take that free block. You're buying into a region that actively manages climate risk every single year as a normal part of operating. The farmers around Augathella are genuinely good at surviving bad years because they've had a lot of practice and they budget for it. They keep cash reserves, they pivot, they adapt. But someone who relocated for the lifestyle and didn't plan for a year of near zero income from drought, that person is going to have a very, very bad time, and no amount of free land offsets a year with no money coming in. And then there's the heat. It's not just hot out there, it's relentlessly, aggressively, personally hot. The kind of hot that makes you question every outdoor hobby you've ever had and wonder if you were secretly an indoor person this whole time without knowing it. You'll rethink gardening. You'll rethink morning walks. You'll rethink the decision itself on days when the air outside feels like opening an oven door directly into your face. What makes Augathella genuinely weird is the whiplash. Some years, the town bakes under drought conditions for months. Some years, the Warrego River floods, and the whole region goes underwater. The climate out there doesn't do moderate. It skips straight from one extreme to the other, sometimes within the same calendar year, and your 5-year plan doesn't factor into any of that. If you work remotely, carry a solid savings buffer and actually want the slow pace, wide open sky version of life, rather than just wanting to escape something, Augathella is one of the more straightforward offers on this list. The services exist, the community is functional, and the land is usable. The climate just doesn't care what you came there for. Number 5. Blackall. Blackall has 2 claims to fame. It's the birthplace of Jackie Howe, the legendary shearer who set a world record in the 1890s that stood for decades, and it's sitting about 1,000 kilometres from Brisbane with nothing but flat road and heat shimmer between you and anything resembling a city. Population around 1,200, which sounds small until you remember we just spent time in Mutabura with 70 people. So Blackall is practically a metropolis by comparison. And unlike most towns on this list, Blackall actually has stuff. A hospital, a school, a supermarket, council services, a real community calendar. The Barcoo River runs through it, and the surrounding region still runs livestock and some cropping. Agriculture accounts for 55% of Australian land use nationally. And you can feel that out here, where the economy moves at the pace of the paddock and everything connects back to what's happening on the land around town. But let's talk about that hospital for a second. It exists, yes. What it can't do is everything, anything beyond basic care, and you're either waiting on a medical evacuation or driving a very long way to Longreach or further, and that drive is not a quick one. The supermarket exists too, but your options are limited and prices run higher than the city because everything gets trucked in across hundreds of kilometres of outback road, and that freight cost lands directly on the shelf price. The land deals in Blackall come with conditions attached. You build within a set time frame. You live in the town. You show up. The council isn't running a passive investment scheme. They're buying neighbours, and they're pretty direct about that being the whole point. The wool industry that originally built Blackall has changed shape over the decades. Farms consolidated, got bigger, and now need fewer people to run them. So the local job market runs on council work, health, education, and agricultural roles that are seasonal and don't always have openings. If you're not bringing your own income source into town, the employment picture gets tight fast. What Blackall genuinely does well is community identity. The town knows exactly what it is and doesn't pretend otherwise. There are festivals, footy seasons, local events, and a social fabric built by people who chose to stay and actively decided to make it work, rather than wait for someone else to. The heat still comes for you though. Summer maximums push well above 35 degrees regularly, and the flat, treeless land around town gives the sun absolutely nothing to fight against. You're exposed out there in a way that takes real adjustment. And if you've got teenagers, buckle up. The school works, but the social world for a 15-year-old who grew up in a city is going to feel less like a lifestyle choice and more like a consequence. Number 4, Barcaldine. In 1891, shearers gathered under a ghost gum tree in Barcaldine and basically invented the Australian Labor Party. That strike changed the country's political direction for the next century. And now, more than 130 years later, the town built on workers' rights is giving away free land because it can't get enough workers to stay. If that's not ironic, I don't know what is. Barcaldine sits in central Queensland with around 1,500 people, which makes it one of the biggest stops on this whole list. There's a hospital, schools, a real community calendar, and the Tree of Knowledge, the actual preserved ghost gum where the labour movement kicked off, which now lives under a protective structure after someone poisoned it in 2006. The Central Western Queensland Remote Area Planning and Development Board coordinates land and housing incentives across the region, and Barcaldine fits squarely into that program. But the free land isn't really about giving people a lifestyle upgrade. It's a recruitment tool. The agricultural sector around Barcaldine has gone through exactly the kind of restructuring that kills small town economies. Bigger farms, more machines, fewer people needed to run them. So the town's economy now runs on services, health, education, and council work. And all of those sectors need warm bodies showing up every day. Nurses, teachers, tradespeople. The free block of land is the sign-on bonus, and the actual job is keeping the town's services from collapsing under their own staffing shortages. Barcaldine is about 1,100 kilometres from Brisbane, which is an 11-hour drive if you don't stop. And you're going to stop because that's an insane amount of driving. Rockhampton is the nearest city with real services, and that's still a few hours east. If your current life involves weekend city trips for concerts, decent restaurants, or just the general stimulation of being around a lot of people, you'll need to completely rewire what a weekend means to you. The summers run hot, rainfall comes and goes without much warning, and Abaris data on broadacre farming productivity in this region shows a long squeeze from climate shifts that doesn't look like it's reversing anytime soon. That pressure doesn't stay on the farms. It flows straight through to the businesses and services that depend on the agricultural economy for their customer base. What Barcaldine does have that most towns on this list genuinely don't is a sense of identity that goes deeper than just geography. The Australian Workers' Heritage Centre is there. The history is real, and people who connect with that story tend to find the isolation a lot easier to sit with than people who move purely for cheap land and a quieter life. So if you're a nurse, a tradie, or a teacher who works remotely and wants land that costs nothing, Barcaldine at least gives you a functioning town to land in. And Cloncurry is about to make Barcaldine look like it's practically next door to civilization. Number 3, Cloncurry. Cloncurry once recorded 53.1 degrees Celsius. That was the highest temperature ever measured in Australia at the time. And the town didn't respond to that record by warning people away. They put it on merchandise. Let that sink in. So, Cloncurry sits in northwest Queensland, about 1,800 kilometres from Brisbane, with a population of around 3,500 people. And it's actually one of the more functional stops on this entire list. Real mining economy, real pastoral sector, a hospital, schools, the John Flynn Place Museum, and the birthplace of the Royal Flying Doctor Service. The town punches above its weight, historically and economically, which makes the fact that it's still giving away land incentives to attract residents genuinely interesting. The reason the land deals exist isn't because Cloncurry is struggling the way Muttaburra or Quilpie are struggling. It's because the mining sector floods the region with fly-in, fly-out workers who land, do their shift rotation, and leave without spending $1 in the local cafe, enrolling a kid in school, or showing up to a single community event. The town gets the noise and the traffic of a bigger population without any of the actual benefits of one. And the McKinley Shire's incentive programs are a direct response to that, trying to trade cheap land for real neighbours instead of rotating shift workers. Now, about that heat. Average summer maximums in Cloncurry run in the high 30s to low 40s on a regular Tuesday in January. And that's before the wet season humidity arrives and makes the air feel like breathing through a warm, wet towel. At 53 degrees, your phone shuts down from thermal warnings. Outdoor work stops entirely, cars overheat in car parks, and the air outside doesn't just feel hot. It feels like it's actively pushing back against you opening the door. People who've lived there describe stepping outside in January as something you do quickly and with intent, not casually. But Cloncurry has something most towns on this list don't. Mount Isa is 120 kilometres away, about an hour's drive, and Mount Isa is a real city with a proper hospital and full services. That proximity changes everything about the isolation calculation. You're not 3 hours from help. You're 1 hour from a city, which in outback Queensland is practically suburban. For anyone in a trade, working in healthcare, or coming in with mining sector experience, Cloncurry is probably the most economically rational move on this entire list. The jobs aren't theoretical. The pay in the resources sector is real money, and the cost of living out there is genuinely lower than the coast in ways that actually show up in your bank account every month. The town just also happens to treat its all-time heat record like a fun pub trivia answer rather than a reason to maybe pack sunscreen and reconsider your life choices. Number 2, Winton. Winton is where Waltzing Matilda got its first public performance, where you can walk through a museum holding actual dinosaur fossils pulled from the ground nearby, and where the Longreach Regional Council will hand you a free block of land if you promise to build on it and stick around. 900 people and a Cretaceous-era bone collection don't pay the town's bills on their own, so the land incentives are doing a lot of heavy lifting. The tourism economy in Winton is real, and that's genuinely different from most towns on this list. The Australian Age of Dinosaurs Museum draws visitors from all over the country. The Waltzing Matilda Centre pulls people in who want to connect with something that actually matters to Australian culture. And the town has built an identity around those assets that makes it feel less like a desperate outpost and more like a place that chose its personality. If you want to live somewhere with a story already attached to it, Winton has one, and it's a good one. But tourism is fragile in ways that only become obvious when something goes wrong. Roads flood and tourists don't come. Fuel prices spike, road trips get cancelled. A global event shuts everything down, and Winton finds out almost immediately how thin that revenue layer actually is. The pastoral economy underneath the tourism is what keeps the town breathing between visitor seasons, and that economy is under its own pressure, with Abaris data showing long-term rainfall variability has squeezed productivity across the region for years. The cattle and sheep operations around Winton are surviving because they've adapted, not because conditions got easier, and they're consolidating rather than expanding, which means fewer jobs, not more. The practical day-to-day reality of living in Winton is 40-degree summers, a school that needs more students to stay viable, and medical services that are limited enough that anything serious sends you down the road. Longreach is about 180 kilometres away and counts as the nearest city of any real size, which is at least manageable for a supply run, but it's not exactly popping out for groceries. Employment in Winton runs through tourism, council work, pastoral roles, and the museum sector, and none of those categories are hiring in volume. If you're not bringing remote income, or a trade that the town actually needs right now, the math gets uncomfortable pretty quickly, and the free land stops feeling like a bonus and starts feeling like the only financially rational part of the whole arrangement. Winton's offer is probably the most emotionally appealing one on this entire list because the town has genuine character and the isolation feels like something the place earned rather than something it's apologising for. Character alone just doesn't cover the power bill when the last tourist van pulls out of town in April. Number 1, Longreach. Longreach calls itself the capital of the outback, and for once, the marketing isn't lying. There's a Qantas Founders Museum, the Stockman's Hall of Fame, a real hospital, a TAFE, flights to Brisbane, and a population of around 3,000 people. By every single measure we've used across this entire list, Longreach wins. And it's still giving away land in 2026 to get people to move there. Sit with that for a second. The most connected, most serviced, most livable town in this whole conversation still can't fill its residential blocks without sweetening the deal. That's not a Longreach problem. That's the whole equation of remote Australian life in 2026 telling you something loud and clear. The cost of distance, heat, isolation, and limited options for your kids and your partner is high enough that free land is the minimum entry point just to get people to consider it. The flights to Brisbane exist, but they're not cheap and the schedule isn't generous, so you're not nipping down for a weekend whenever you feel like it. The hospital handles a solid range of cases, but anything complex gets transferred to Rockhampton or Brisbane anyway. The TAFE runs real programs, but if your kid decides they want university after finishing school in Longreach, that's a long-distance proposition in every sense of the word. What Longreach does have is genuine civic pride, the kind that comes from being the town that smaller towns drive to. People from Barcaldine, Blackall, Winton, all of them treat Longreach as the big smoke for their major shopping runs and medical appointments. That status gives the town a different energy, a sense that it's holding something together rather than watching it slip away. The agricultural economy around Longreach runs on cattle, sheep, and some cropping, and Abaris data shows productivity growth in broadacre farming across this region slowed significantly after the 1980s. Farms got bigger, needed fewer people to run them, and the service town that once fed and housed all those extra workers quietly lost its reason to stay the same size. The land incentives are the Longreach Regional Council's direct response to that math, trying to rebuild the population base that the agricultural sector quietly took with it when it mechanised. For remote workers, specifically, Longreach is probably the best deal on this entire list. More services, more connectivity, more community, cheapest land. The summers are still brutal. The distance from Brisbane is still 1,200 kilometres of real road, and your social options are still a fraction of what you'd have in any coastal city. But Longreach, being the best option on this list and still needing to give land away, is the most honest thing any of these towns has accidentally admitted. The free block was never the hard part of the deal. That's it for today. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe the channel. See you in the next one.